So this week, Ryan, hi there. So this week's talk is about team. And it came to me like in a sort of, it felt like a good idea to talk about team. And then when I actually started looking at what to say, it took a little while to get together what it was I was thinking about this. And then it sort of all came together. So bear with me if I have to sort of scratch around to find what I'm getting at. Kieran, hello, and Ian, hello. Kieran, I miss you. Evening, Ian. All right, so here we go. So the first place I always start is, why is this thing important, or what is it? So in the case of team, I think it's why is it important? And I think what it comes down to is a couple of things. One is that we are, whether we like it or not, we are social beings, we're social creatures, and that is a biological and a psychological need that human beings have to be in communication, in commune with each other and working together. It's hard at times, but that is how we're inbuilt. I was watching something the other day that was, and it reminded me, I kind of knew a little bit about this, of the fact that, you know, if newborn babies aren't given affection, that it will make them ill and they can die because literally of not getting affection. So we are social creatures basically, and so that shouldn't be limited to our social time. It can also be part of what we're doing in the workspace. And so that's one reason why I think team is important. Hey Lisa, welcome. But the other thing is that saying about, if your dream doesn't involve other people, it's not big enough, which I think Ava DuVernay said. And I think that's really true, because if you think about people with lofty ambitions, these things can't be done on their own. Like if you think about what Elon Musk is up to, he can't do that on his own. He can't get to Mars on his own, no matter how hard he tries. And so, excuse me, and so if you have ambitions that are lofty, then you are gonna need a team. And so instead of thinking, when I get to the place where I need a team, I'll build a team, why not be in the process of starting to see who you would want your collaborators to be right now? Because a lot of the time, I feel that the people who become your team in the future, from people that I'm observing, it seems like a lot of them have come from their past. So you think, oh, you know, one day, if you're a filmmaker, one day I'll be collaborating with Steven Spielberg. Well, no, actually, maybe one day your director of photography will be the guy in your class at film school who was always into, cinematography, and you've already got this unspoken understanding between each other, and it was just an easy fit. So it's beneficial, I think, to start thinking in terms of team now. And the other thing is if you have high ambitions for yourself, then thinking about team is another way of retraining your mindset to think bigger for yourself. Because sometimes the only thing keeping our what we're doing small is because we're thinking small. So thinking team is another way of being able to think bigger for yourself. Kieran, thumbs up from Kieran. So there's those two things. Also, if your dream is only really about yourself and what you can and how it affects you, it's not the highest version of yourself. Basically, it's not the highest. I always refer to this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of the so he's got this like self-actualization as one of the at one point it was the top of this pyramid, and he was saying basically that people can be, whatever you have the potential to be, you should be that very highest version of that, and that was the peak of of this pyramid. But in later years he said that actually self-transcendence was even more important, i.e. transcending the self basically, and being more about altruism and about other people and being more in the world and seeing yourself as one with the universe. I mean, that was probably the more highfalutin spiritual side of it. But ultimately, if your dream involves other people and you can see it in that way, that is a form of self-transcendence, and it is beyond self-actualization, because it is saying, my dream is bigger than me. This, whatever is coming from me, through me, is bigger than me. And so you're just cracking on and just starting to think from that place now. If you build it, they will come, kind of thing. Like if you start to nurture that state of mind now, then you're creating the space in which the circumstances for you to need a team will come. Yay! Hi Daniel, hello, and El Heretier, and Alison and Tony have joined. Hello, welcome. All right, so those are the reasons why team. And also, one of the other things to add is that needing other people is very distinct from using other people. So some people have team, but it isn't about involving other people, having people have an opportunity to, you know, express themselves in their highest version. It's just about using them to create something for themselves, and therefore that's really just that might look like team, but really that's just another way of having the attention all on you and it all being about you, because you're using people. It's all about what you can get from them, rather than this is an opportunity for them as well, and it's being expressed through whatever it is you're creating. So yeah, just wanted to make that distinction. So I think there's like, I've categorized where your team can come from into two different categories, two very general basic categories. One is formal, the other informal. So for example, like formal relationships will be things like agents, publishers, producers, a manager, a booker, you know, those types of things. I don't know, because everyone on here is in such different industries. You've probably got your own version of what formal arrangements are in your team. Hey Owen. So maybe put in the comments if there's any others that you can think of that I might have missed that might come into the sort of formal category. But then in the informal category, I think people forget that there's this whole bunch of people that can informally be your team that we don't sort of consciously think about. I know, how long has it taken, Owen? Like 2 years or something. So that could be your peers, it could be past colleagues, it could be past employers, it could be just people, general people in your contacts, and also, frankly, you guys can be, sort of informal contacts, informal team members for each other. But I'll come to that later. Hey, Carly and Hannison22. I wonder what your name is, Hannison22. Anyway. So let's go back to the formal one. So what does that look like? Okay, so the formal arrangement, or the formal team members, which is going to be your agents, producers, publishers, people that you've got basically like some defined specific arrangement with, probably in writing, you know, probably some form of agreement or contract in writing. Usually that has a finite duration, or if it is open-ended, it also state that in the agreement. You've got agreed results that you've agreed are going to come out of this relationship. So I'm going to use agent as an example because that's probably the best example that I've got in my working life of that team member who, you know, that falls into that formal category. So, you know, the arrangement is open-ended, but there is an agreement that they will get me auditions and manage contracts and, you know, discuss opportunities and, you know, build the career building stuff. And that's the agreement. If they do stuff outside of that, then that is not the agreement, and you know then you can sort of recalibrate the arrangement, or you can, you know, choose to move on to someone else. But you know what I mean? There's very specific terms under which this arrangement is happening. There's usually agreed fees or percentages that are changing hands. Hi Tom, hello and welcome. So that's kind of like the formal arrangement. But then there's like all these informal team members that aren't officially in your team, but I think it would be helpful to start to think of these people as unofficially kind of being unofficially in your team, unofficially. And that equally, you can unofficially think of yourself as unofficially in their teams. The peers and the former colleagues and all the rest of it that I was talking about before. And the only thing that really defines that, I would say, is that you have a good, respectful, professional, possibly reciprocal, but not always necessary, relationship. And that's it. If you've got that, then you've got the foundations for having a kind of informal, a relationship with that person whereby you're each other's team members. Because team doesn't have to be, meeting every day with a specific goal in mind. All the rest of it, it can be a very loose, sort of more nebulous network. It doesn't have to be all about like a specific arrangement. An example is, I'll give you an example later because I've got some other things to say before I get there. Okay, so with the formal arrangement, I think there's sometimes some traps that we can fall into. So I just wanted to talk about that because I've had quite a sort of an interesting journey in terms of learning more about how to manage those formal relationships. And I think one of the problems, I'm going to talk from the perspective of actors and agents, because I think that's a really useful example, but there might be ones in your working life where you've got a similar arrangement with somebody that this is also applicable to. All right, so one of the traps I think that actors get into with agents is that they think that once they do get an agent, that's it. They can sit back and they don't have to worry about doing anything towards building their career. So they can go off and have a great life now, doing whatever they do, and they just wait for the call to come. And first of all, there's two traps there really. One is waiting for the agent to do everything for you, and the second is making everything about the agent so that all your sort of efforts are orientated around getting an agent. I went to a talk given by this lady who had got herself to the point where she'd made this web series that was being discussed by a major production company, and she'd had a very sort of very abundant career in comedy, and she had done it all without an agent. She'd done it all purely by networking. And I don't mean networking up as in trying to get to Judd Apatow all the time. I am literally talking about peer-to-peer networking, which I know I bang on about that all the time, but I think it is really important. So the idea that the agent or whichever decision maker is applicable in your situation is the be all and end all is, I think, a trap. They are a good, fantastic addition to your team, but they're not. You have to go into the relationship, I think, with the right mindset. And so you don't want to basically be making your career their problem. And I think that's what happens, especially that's what I see a lot with actors. And, to be honest with you, I definitely did that when I started out, and I definitely go through spaces still where it's just like, well, it's all on you. And even if those agents only have access to certain people that you couldn't have access to without them, there's always something that one can be doing that isn't, that's supporting them in their efforts. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to be permanently on holiday until you get the call for the audition. You can still be doing stuff too. So making your career their problem, I think, is a trap of of these formal arrangements when it comes to in the creative world. And not partnering them. So, and I think this goes along with a later point actually that I was going to make, is infantilizing ourselves. So, i.e. making it turning the dynamic into a mother-child or father-child relationship. Most of the time agents are women, but it depends. I'm going to use the agent as agent relationship as the model, but whatever's applicable in your world. But yeah, we have this sort of, I've seen it a lot where people basically turn their agent into their mum, and they don't just call them about work, they call them about their life. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just saying that you are setting up a particular dynamic if you have that relationship with this person, this agent, or whichever formal team member we're talking about here. Better, I would say, is to partner them and be their colleague, work with them. What can we do to create this career? Because then that empowers them, that makes them feel like they're not just they're not just a nappy changer. Do you know what I mean? A sort of metaphorical or theoretical or whatever figurative nappy changer. They want to be colleagues. They want to feel like they're working with a grown-up. It's powerful on both sides to be able to have that dynamic. I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong, but I would say you want to be aiming for having a colleague, a peer-to-peer relationship with them. Your colleagues, you're not their boss. Even though the dynamic is in theory you're hiring them, we all know that that's not really what the dynamic is with agents. But equally, you're not their subordinate, because I think that's sometimes a trap that people fall into as well, is thinking that they're their boss, the agent is your boss, and that you can be fired by them. Well, that's not quite true either. They can let you go, but they're not firing you because they never employed you. Because if they employed you, they would be the ones paying you and not you paying them. So partnership and having an appreciation and a respect for them. I think that's sometimes something that's missing in terms of the relationship with people and their agents. This is, I think, applicable with other sort of more formal arrangements as well, though. Rasmus, Rob, and Lee, hello, welcome. Hey, babe. Is that sometimes I think people don't respect agents and forget things like when they first sign you, a lot of the time they're working for free. And I think people forget that when they come to the point where they want to sort of leave their agent because it hasn't worked out. I went to a talk recently that was about representation, and one of the things that the guy said is, when you come to consider moving on from your agent, just have a think, how much money have you earned them? When you're all bitching in your head about joking, sorry for silence, but today you are awesome, really good points, great, thank you. It's more sort of practical, today's conversation, but still I think it's important stuff. But yeah, so when you're thinking about moving on from them, you have to think, like, what have you done for them? We always think that the relationship with the agent and the talent is a one-way street. It isn't. And by respecting them, you are empowering them and giving them the incentive to want to work for you. Because, I mean, it'd be good to get an agent on this, actually. Not that this is all about agents, but just to say, what is it like to work for an ungrateful client? And just to have someone speak honestly, without naming names, obviously, and just say, what is your experience of working with a shitty client as opposed to one, who extends their appreciation every now and again? Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for trying. Thank you for trying to generate opportunities for me. What can I do? How can I partner you in this? Doesn't that feel like a better place to come from, rather than I haven't heard from my agent for 6 months and God, I don't know what, you know what I mean? Like, how many times do we hear people like, anyways, it's not a right and wrong, but there is a place to come from that's feels more rewarding, feels more aligned, and feels more satisfying. That's all I'll say. So Ella, hi, Andy, as well. Hi, welcome. All right, so we're just talking about informal team members, so people that you've created an arrangement with that are, consider them to be part of your team, basically. And so so just one last thing on this whole thing of like whoever this formal arrangement thing is with, that when you do come to end that relationship, be respectful of them and give them their dignity. Just remember that they have been working hard for you, and even if they haven't, don't worry about it. You've already got your new agent. You're already sorted. You're going somewhere else, so you can be respectful in that. You don't have to be angry with them. And someone said to me once, in fact it was Daniel, my coach, who is on this, or he may still be in this conversation, said to me once when I was talking about ending a particular relationship, a professional relationship, he was like, can you leave it in such a way that you could work with these people again? What can you do that can create that in your relationship with them? And I thought that was such a good mindset to have, because sometimes we just think that it's okay to just stack up the dynamite at the end of the bridge and just hit the trigger and doesn't matter. don't need that bridge anyway. But actually, you just never know, because we're not heading through life in the direction that it makes the most sense. If we were heading through life in the opposite direction, i.e. coming from the future back, then yeah, we would know everything that is the right and wrong thing to do, but we don't. So you never know in the future how that relationship might be become important again. So torching them by ending them in a really shitty way, it might feel good at the time to be able to say all the frustrations that you've had, but ultimately it's never going to be as satisfying as being able to walk away. And I had this very recently, is being able to walk away from a conversation with somebody that I had entered a professional relationship with and just go, I genuinely feel that I could call this person again in the future and just have a chat or ask their advice, or I don't know, even be, work with them again in some capacity in the future. That is the ideal way to be able to end these formal team member arrangements. Because when we're self-employed, we think we think it's just the self on our own, but actually all these people are our colleagues in the way that people who go to an office have colleagues around them. It's the same thing. It's just that the dynamic and there's more space and elasticity in the relationship. All right, so then your informal network. So again, like I was saying, it's your peers, your past colleagues. It's people that you don't have a formal arrangement with, basically. One of those can be industry connections. So the reason that I bring this up is because Amber asked me a question on my Instagram story a little while ago, and she was like, how do I contact, or how do I best reach out to decision makers? And I said to her that I had some points that I made on this thing, but I just want to reiterate them again, because I think that we think that decision makers are untouchables, off in the distance, that we can never get our hands on, sort of thing. But I think if you're patient, that you can start to slowly build up relationships with these people. Social media is fantastic for that. You have to, not everyone can win at this, because not everybody knows how to communicate well. But if you feel you've got good communication skills, you can use social media. If you're lucky enough to be able to happen across an email address or a phone number for somebody that you want to start to build a professional connection with, then go for it. But these are the things I will say. The first thing I think one should do is just be clear on what you actually want. So sometimes, especially, like, say for example with actors, and I've definitely done this, we can get access to a list of I don't know, however many casting directors there are, 200 odd, 250, 300 casting directors, a million, I don't know. But like, say there's about 300 casting directors, and what we tend to do is we just go through this list and we write to all of them. Actors are always doing these things called postcards. They get these postcards printed, a still of them, either a headshot or something from their latest TV show, and they tell the casting director what they've been up to. And these things cost a couple of £100 a go, and you're just sending them out a couple of times a year maybe. But actually, a lot of those people that the actors are reaching out to are going to be commercials casting directors, and the actor doesn't want to do commercials, or they're going to be they're only going to be dealing with children casting, or they're actually, if they read the fine print, they would see that they only deal with background artists. They're not dealing with, So actually, figure out what you want when you're approaching these decision makers and pick a handful. That was advice that was given to me, and it just makes so much more sense than, trying to do this 200 people. You're not going to be able to maintain a relationship with 250 casting directors anyways. So why not pick 10, maybe ones that you've worked with before, and start to make them the target of your communications, and then you can spend time crafting a specific bespoke letter specifically for them, rather than what they can clearly see is a cut and paste job and goes along with all the other cut and paste jobs that they've received. But if you're only doing 10 or 20 handwritten, I don't know if you've got good penmanship or whatever, like that, when people see how much effort's gone into it, it's much harder to discard something. This is obviously if you're writing, you're putting something in snail mail. If you're sending an email, same principle applies in terms of the level of, specificity that you've written in your note, whoever it's to. Obviously, I'm talking from the perspective of actors, but whatever field you are in, obviously you know that you guys know that applies. Tony says that's very true, but where do you draw the line when you're very sure you're constantly being mugged off, taken for granted, and undermined? Okay, Tony. So I think you're talking. So you're sorry. I should have come to this point earlier. I think you're talking about those formal arrangements. So okay. If you feel like the person that you're working with is taking advantage of you, have you had the conversation? Have you had the conversation to say there's something that something isn't right for me in this arrangement, and been clear with them about what the experience is like from where you're coming from, and giving them an opportunity to change? I feel that if someone does something, then I feel like that can be corrected because we all make mistakes. However, if someone has a way of being, i.e. you're talking about one of these like formal arrangements, someone has a way of being, I think it's unlikely to change. If they are consistently, to use your words, mugging you off, taking you for granted, undermining you, then that's the way they are. So I would say that that's the end of the relationship if you value yourself. And then from there, for you, the next step is to find somebody who will appreciate you and not take you for granted. So this is what I mean about like the frustrations, because every person who has these relationships and has an experience of frustration, it will be some form of basically what you're saying. Now, you can spend your time getting all frustrated and worked up about it, and I've definitely done that. It's like, oh, why aren't they why aren't they putting me up for stuff? Why aren't they this? Why aren't they that? Why do they always da-da-da-da? Or you can just do something about it. Take responsibility for this relationship. You hired these people, so if you've hired someone that's treating you badly, then who's that on? It's on us, because we're the ones that hired them. So, you know what I mean? It's like going into Sainsbury's and suddenly the store's empty and you're like, this place is ridiculous. Why haven't, and then you go back again the next week. It's like, why haven't they got any stuff here? And then you go back a third week. It's like, this is the third time I've been here and they haven't got any stuff. Well, maybe it's time to go to Tesco's. Yeah? Does that make sense? All right, Anna, hi. Anna Spanner 73, good year. Okay, what we got here? So Rob says you probably need to get through a secretary first too. Well, yeah, I mean, sure, but then maybe the secretary is the one to build a relationship with. Wouldn't you like to get to know Steven Spielberg's secretary if you were a filmmaker? So let's not. Those gatekeepers of the gatekeepers, they're important people too, and I think we forget that because equally those people are going to become. That's not their ambition, is to be Steven Spielberg's secretary. Their ambition is probably to be a producer, and so the place they start is working at Amblin. So if you can build up a relationship with that person, that is as valid a relationship as trying to access, a producer, a decision maker, a gatekeeper. Mike, hi. Official Wayne, what's up? Tony says, thank you. Cool. All right. So these industry connections, what do we say to them? Who do we be when we're trying to communicate with them? Well, this is my list. It's not extensive, so if there's anything else you think, then please put a comment in and chip in as well of things that you found that are important in terms of how you communicate with them. I think one is be clear. So you've been clear about what you want and you've picked a handful of people to communicate with. Okay, now it takes 7 times, they say, to be remembered by somebody. 7 times of meeting with somebody or interacting with somebody for them to remember you. So I guess the first thing is be patient. I'm not talking about writing 7 times in like the course of 2 months, because that's going to be weird and stalkery. Be patient in the sense of every 3 or 4 months or longer, depending on what it is you want, depending on who it is, depending on the nature of your business, reach out to them. If they're going to be at a particular event and it's okay for you to be there, i.e. financially you can make it work to be there, time-wise or whatever, then go to that event. Say, hey, I don't know if you remember, I sent you that email before. Oh, yeah, I remember you. How's it going? Da-da-da-da. And then from there, after that, you can email them. Great to see you at such and such. Hey, book festival or whatever. That's how it works. But that might take a year or 2 years. But the next thing you know, you've got a great industry contact, but you have to be patient with it. Be specific when you write to people. If I get something that's like super long, I just have to put that email on the back burner to deal with at another time. Even like long text messages, I'm just like, let me come to that later. So be really specific. The person knows that this is a cold call, probably wanting something, so you don't have to dress it up with hey, how's the yous and all the rest of it. But equally, you can still be polite. But you don't have to. I was going to use a phrase that probably isn't right for this conversation, but you don't have to you don't have to dress it up. Basically, that you are getting in contact, that you want something. Be specific. Be concise. You know, there's an old, is it Winston Churchill that said, sorry, this letter's so long, but I didn't have time to write a shorter one. It is a lost skill to edit. Well, maybe it isn't actually, because maybe that's what emojis are about, but emojis aren't really going to be appropriate for these types of communications. But it is a lost skill to just edit and be concise. You know, you know, people say things in 2 or 3 paragraphs, and really it's a sentence thing. You know, there's a movement, I think it's called 5 sentences or less, and there's actually a website, and literally the website is just like, we're here to support the idea that the email should be 5 sentences or less, and that's it. And I agree with that, because if somebody sends me something that is that short and to the point and polite and professional, I'm more likely to respond to that, not out of anything other than I haven't got time I'm not prepared to make time, should I say, to read a lengthy email from someone I don't know. So be concise, be polite, be professional, be patient. Those are the things I would say. Anybody else got anything that they would want to add to that? Ryan says, always make friends with the folks lower down the chain. I find it helps get roots in. Yeah, and that's a really good point, because you never know who knows who, because, you know, just because in your mind you've categorized that person as being lower down the pecking order, they might actually know somebody. You don't know who they know, and you don't know who they would want to introduce you to if you treated them with respect. I went to a film school course, and one of the people on that course was 18, and you might be predisposed to go, okay, industry beginner, doesn't really know anything, not connected. Well, it turns out her dad was the head of a major department at a studio. And that didn't change anything particularly, because she was a really great person. So we just all of us got on. But imagine if I'd just been like, oh God, child, you know, and treated her like that. So Ryan, you're right. You don't know who you don't know who someone is. Just meet people equally when you're meeting colleagues or potential colleagues and peers. Bokeh love. Is that as in bokeh as in like photography? Anyway, hello. Richard, hi. C, what's up? And George says, what a great idea. Which one? Out of interest. And Ian says, I came across something on the net, the 5-finger pitch, worth checking out. Okay, well, there you go. That's a bit of advice from Ian, who says check out the 5-finger pitch. So let's all Google that afterwards. Okay, so who else is in this informal network? Industry fans. Let's not forget our industry fans. So who are industry fans? Okay, the people that have hired you. Either once or many times, but look after those relationships basically, because they want you to win, and it is not to be underestimated. 5 sentences, good idea. Yeah, man, it's the way forward. It's not to be underestimated how important those relationships are for people that have been fans of yours. I'm remiss at doing this, and I'm going to make an effort to make sure I get better at that, because it's so important. Those people gave you a chance. They took a punt on you when maybe others weren't, or others weren't sort of acknowledging your talents or skills. So looking after those industry fans is a really big deal. Thank you to whoever's doing those hearts. They're all multicolored now. That's nice. So the other, this is my favorite part of the informal network, because the other part of it is your network. So it's and what I realize is that I do this subconsciously, but it's a really good thing to actually do consciously, is to know who in your peer group is good for what, or does what, or excels at what. By which I mean, Hang on, let me just see. Just comments. I'm just going back. Rob says, being nice to people is good premise for your entire life, not just your business life. 100% agreed. And George says 5 sentences was a good idea. Got it. Gwyneth, welcome. Hey. Okay. So knowing who does what, who's good for what. So for example, there are going to be people in your network who are very good at critique. They're very good at giving notes. So you can show them something, be it, you know, your writing, your photography, your paintings, whatever, your poetry, your book. They will give you a really good critique of that. They might be quite hard on you, or firm, should I say, but they will give you a really, and it will be useful notes. There's going to be people that are going to be a lot kinder if you were to ask them to critique. So they're not necessarily the ones that you want to go to for that, but they are amazing cheerleaders. So the categories I came up with, and again, chip in if there's others that you can think of things that people in your network, different areas of, I don't know, not expertise, but skills or whatever that people in your network can bring to the table. Skills isn't the right word, but you get what I'm getting at. So there's the ones that are good critiques. There's the cheerleaders. There's the ones that are great at inspiring. There's the ones that are good at advice. So those ones that I think are the people who are very good at being neutral about something that you bring to them. Because what I've observed in our communications is how easy it is, based on how you tell somebody something that happened, to enroll them in your idea of what happened, and then they agree with you and you think you've got an objective advice, when actually you've programmed them to agree with you by the way that you told the story. Some people are very good at just remaining objective, and so those people are the ones you want to get advice from. Really, who's the experts in your network? This is what I sort of alluded to earlier and wanted to come back to, is like with an example, is that I recently wanted some advice about contracts, and I was like, who in my network do I know who would know about this? And I was like, look, cool, so. So I reached out to these people. Those are the, and you know, it's not like one person is one thing. So at some point, that same person who's my expert on contracts will also become a cheerleader for something else. You know, it depends what specifically it is, but just know, I think probably generally people are pulled towards a particular thing. Yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking what I would be an expert for some people. But hey, if you're looking for a cheerleader, then, you know, or if you're looking for advice, critique, that's my wheelhouse. Whereas expert, no, not so much. Whereas, you know, for example, a friend of mine is a you know, top flight editor. If I had a technical question, without doubt, he's the person that I would ask. So who are your experts? Who are your connectors? Who are the people that just know people? You know, because Malcolm Gladwell in Tipping Point talks about these, you know, mavens, early adopters, connectors. I don't know if there was a third one, or maybe it was 3 categories of people. I don't think it's as clean cut as that between the categories. I think we have like a percentage of each in all of us, but I don't think I'm particularly a connector. I think I'm probably a maven. Probably mavens are the ones who sort of know about things and like to share information. Early adopters are the ones that take on, you know, when the iPhone first came out, my friend was he went straight and got an iPhone, and I was like, I don't trust this technology. I'm not an early adopter at all. It took me a long time before I sort of went down that. I became a sort of Apple baby, as it were. But some people and connectors are people who like to just, like say, they just love people, and they just love, you all know somebody, or you are one, you know someone who just loves people, hooking people up. My neighbor is a fantastic connector. Like, I'll be chatting with him, and every person, like, we're chatting outside, and every person that walks past, he's like, oh hey, do you know da da da, they do blah blah blah, and they live over there, and there's me, I don't know anyone around here. So who do you know in your network who likes to connect? Okay, so Carly says, my character is a connector. Yeah, because you're right, because like deep down, probably not deep down, but yeah, it's more of a personality thing to be that way. But given that's how we navigate, I guess, you know, it's an appropriate way of identifying somebody, because most people are living in character, that living from that character day to day. And so who these people are is just like, they can be that in your team, and then you suddenly realize, God, you've got this world of resources to help you to get somewhere. It's just, now you need to think of a problem big enough that you require all these people that you've got. You need to think of a dream big enough that needs all these people, because otherwise what a waste. These people don't get the opportunity to be the connector that they know they are, to be the expert that they know they can be, do you know what I mean? So you've got to come up with some big ass problems for them to get involved with. Tom says people can have a little of each of these personality trait skills, but they tend to have one dominant trait. Yeah, I think so, because as I was reading them, I was like, oh, I'm a bit of that, but mainly I'm that, and a little bit of that. So yeah, I think so. I think I can definitely see people that, to me, connector really stands out, because I sort of feel a little bit of character jealousy. Like, I wish I was like that good at just like, hey, have you met blah, blah, blah? Yeah, you guys should, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, Carly does it all the time in the art world. I'm sure that's how you occur to people, Carly, as being a connector. I can just imagine that you're just really good at just like, okay, you guys should talk to you. Anyway, all right, Gwyneth, that's brilliant. Awesome. Okay, so then also, just generally, your peers can be an important informal team member for you. What can they do? Well, they can be accountability buddies. That's a great way of you having a team member be a peer of yours, i.e. you guys work with each other to make whatever you're working on happen and be accountable to each other. You can collaborate with your peers. I mean, a word of caution about working with people, especially friends, is you have to just be willing to let that relationship go and make it clean and whole if you do have to let that relationship go, because it doesn't always work out. I've had several writing collaborations, and they are like marriages, and you have to let them go if they're not working out. I don't know any other way of saying it, but equally they can be wonderful when they do work out, but don't feel away if it doesn't. You tried it, and I've tried writing relationships with really good friends, and I'm just like, almost like, how come this didn't work? Because we adore each other as friends, but as collaborators it's just not quite right, and I feel stifled and like I can't, I want to be able to say anything and it not feel stupid, or not feel like I'm butting up against a brick wall, and maybe them having the same experience with me. But equally, I've also written with good friends and people that have become good friends where it's been amazing. So you just have to be alert to how it's going, and if it really feels in your spirit, because you can feel it in your gut whether it's really working or not. Be in discussion, I say, with peers, but just be in discussion to create inspiration. And also, by the way, I forgot to say this earlier, that we are, you guys are all peers now. so be in conversation with each other, because you guys are all like-minded. You guys continue to show up and have this conversation. And by the way, this conversation is only possible because you guys show up. And I'm not talking just because otherwise I would be talking to nobody, but because of your particular listening, where you're listening from makes this conversation possible. I could have these same notes and talk to people that are not listening from where you guys are listening from, and the conversation would go a completely different way and wouldn't be as energized as it is. So even though you're sitting at home in whatever situation you're sitting in, we energetically are making this all happen. So you guys are all peers, you're all like-minded. Be in conversation with each other, because you all kind of recognize each other's names and know each other's handles and that when they come up. So consider yourselves peers. You never know who out of this group might be able to make a difference for somebody. Tom has already been has coached for a few people. I don't know if I'm breaching confidentiality by saying anything more than that, but Tom's already offered coaching sessions to several people, and I think from the feedback that I heard that really made a difference. So yeah, collaborate and discuss, and just be in conversation with each other. 40, you spoke with 40, what? Okay, I don't know what that's about. So most important thing. Okay, most important thing. Oh, I've underlined it loads. All right, so I'm going to rattle through this list a little bit because they're obvious, but they just need to be said. The most important thing in team is who you're being. Because if you're working with people and you're making it a nightmare for them, then it's irrelevant. What you're trying to create. You have to come from a place of being the space for people to be the highest version of themselves. So whether you're in a team that you've created or someone has created and put you in that team, you've been employed temporarily for something. So here's my list. Be a pro. We talked about that. There's a whole talk about that. So I don't need to say anything more than that. Don't gossip. So this program that I did recently, one of the ground rules was no gossiping. And it was so funny how much everyone wanted to discuss that. What exactly is gossiping? And the facilitator sort of allowed the questions for a little while. And she's like, look, you know what gossiping is. And I just thought, I love this. Because it wasn't just, she said, anything that leaves somebody feeling diminished or demeaned is gossiping. And I thought that was fantastic. Because it creates separation. And it doesn't serve anybody. And ultimately, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel as good as not gossiping. If you've got a problem, take it out with the person that you've got a problem with. Or just let it go, because maybe it doesn't actually even matter. So don't gossip. Don't complain. And by which I mean, I'm not saying don't say when something's wrong, because that's very different. But complaining is about being in this constant state of things aren't right, things are happening that shouldn't be happening, or things aren't happening that should be, without doing anything about it and making it everybody else's problem. And it's very low frequency energy. So don't complain. If there's something wrong, then deal with it. Either go to the person that can make a difference, basically, instead of making it everyone else's problem. Especially in a small team, it's just unnecessary. Don't go into agreement with other people about complaints. So someone will come to you and just go, oh God, why does Kevin always do that? It's just like, you go, okay, well, why don't you go and talk to Kevin? Tell them that. Rather than, yeah, Kevin is such a, because A, you're gossiping, now you're also complaining, and you're also going into agreement about somebody else's complaint. So get them to sort it out. Be willing, be flexible. Remember that your opinions aren't always needed. Oh, so hard. Even if you're sitting there just thinking, I know that this is wrong, I know that this, sometimes just think for a moment, how does it advance things by having your opinion in the mix with everything else that's going on? Will it make a difference really, or is it just that you need to express yourself? Maybe you can take that offline and just discuss with somebody else. I just really felt like this in the moment, but I realized that it wasn't worth saying, so I didn't. Or something, I don't know. But sometimes our opinions, even though they are very important to us, are not needed and don't help. This should have been at the top, but do your best. Always, obviously, do your best in a team. Remember that you came to work and not to make friends. If it's possible to make good friendships during it, fantastic. But sometimes I feel in some team environments that people's priority is to be liked rather than to get the job done to the best of their ability as a team. Don't worry about it. People will respect you if they see that your professional self is the one that you give to people most of the time. And professional doesn't mean cold. You can be cordial with people. It just means that your priority is not being liked. Also, especially the higher up the tree you are, you can set the tone for what that team's dynamic will be. Because if the person at the top of the tree is constantly arguing or complaining, and I had that recently, and I was just like, wow, it's hard to push back against someone who is like that at the top of the tree, but you stand your ground and you go, no, actually, I'm not going to join you in complaint and gossiping and demeaning people. I'm going to be a stand for being decent to each other and being professional. And I can still be cordial and nice to you, but it means I don't indulge what you're doing. And it's uncomfortable sometimes when you confront people, when you're not confront, but when you are in the presence of somebody that really wants to enroll you in some kind of gossiping or complaining or something. Because you've got to be like, you don't want to coach them, because that's not going to get you anywhere, and they're not going to appreciate it. You don't want to be, well, you need to get yourself out of this complaint mode and blah, 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 blah. But you also don't want to go along with it, because then they'll see you as the person they can always go to and complain and whine and moan about something. So it's a difficult thing to tread, and it's a dance. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you'll not speak up because you thought that you were doing the right thing by not indulging their complaint, and actually that was the time when you should have spoken up. So there's no right way of doing it. I'm just planting the seed in your head. Antonio, hi, welcome. Listen, I'm trying to train myself to do that, because you know what it's like in the creative industries, and it's probably not even right to blame the creative industries. It's down to personalities. But some people are more listeners than they are talkers, and some people are talkers more than they are listeners. But there's so much that you can get from listening, and I'm talking about listening with your entire being. Now, what does that mean? It means perceiving, really. It means listening to where somebody is speaking from, listening to where they're at, listening to what's really going on beyond the words. Because sometimes people are saying one thing, but their being is communicating something else. And so often we miss what the being is communicating because we're too busy waiting. We're not listening properly. We're listening for the end of them talking so that we can talk, rather than listening to what's really being communicated. Is somebody having a bad time or something? Oh, I'm fine. So we hear, they said they're fine. So I can tell them about my weekend now. You know what I'm saying. Listen. Speak up when needed. Meet people where they are. I like this, and I think this is something that's important for me, is meeting people where they are, as in, just because you can do something doesn't mean they can. They've been on a different path from you, and they're in some learning process where they're going to be able to get to do the thing that you expect them to be able to do, or that you can do. So just let them be where they are, and let them go on their specific journey. Let them be on their track, and you be on yours, and give them room to be there. Make room for yourself as well. Make room for who other people are, where they're at, and the more room you give them, the less it will bother you. Anything that you feel could or should change about the way that they go about things. If you give them a little bit of room. Because that's what parents do with children, isn't it? It's like, you can't expect a child to know everything. They've had 8 years or however many years of experience, of life experience, on your 40 or 30 or whatever. It would not be fair. So the same with colleagues sometimes. Some areas they'll be more developed than others. So give them a bit of room, but give yourself room. Not just in that respect, but also give yourself space from the team, because sometimes being in a team can become the only context you know, and suddenly little things become a bigger deal, not because they're a big deal, but because you've lost context. Your life is bigger than this particular team, but when you're working with colleagues, especially intensively, you can lose context. So give yourself space to expand the size of your context. So if you've been working intensively, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week with a particular team, make sure that what you do on that 7th day does not involve that team. Maybe you could, I don't know, I'm not going to suggest, how you go about doing that, but just make sure that you keep context, because then those things that seem annoying won't bother you so much because you've had that distance from them. Being present, Anna Spanner 73 says, yes. Oh, that's an excellent one. I didn't even have that on my list. That's brilliant. And remember that you have this whole other life outside and away from this team. So whatever, and this is again a matter of context really, is that whatever's going on with this team actually doesn't really matter, because you've got this whole other life separate from them. This more applies, I think, to teams where you've been put into the team, i.e. you've been employed by somebody rather than a team that you've created for yourself. But still, you got this whole other life. You recalibrate how important and significant what these people do is, and just let it go. And that's it. And that's basically team. Killer Clown 66. Hey. So I finished early. I thought there was a lot, and so I'm glad that I got through it, because it felt like it's weird how when these things come out, they all come out as about an hour, and no matter how much I try and like trim them down, they always come out at about an hour. So I'm glad I've got a few more minutes. I just wanted to say a couple of things, bit of housekeeping that I mentioned that I would do at the beginning. Is to say thank you again. I know I always thank you guys, but I really do mean it, because like I said earlier, this conversation isn't possible without you guys showing up and being here. So thank you, and thank you for being in conversation on this, like during the week, and then being here on the day. It means a lot. So, and I'm really glad to be able to create this conversation with you guys. Hey, Mark 7 boy. So the next thing is that, in December, you're welcome, Ian. So in December, I'm going to start another one of these 3-month challenge things, because you know we did this one June, July, August. So I think we're going to do another one, and it's going to start in September. So I thought I'd plant the seed now of you guys just having a think of what that project might be. Give you a bit more of a run up to have a think about it, because I think some people wanted to join, but because it came around very quickly, they didn't know what it was going to be, so they didn't get on board. So I just want to give you the heads up that is going to come. And December sounds a long way away, but we're already nearly in October, so it's actually not that far away. The other thing is that there's going to be, I've mentioned this before, but just to say again, there's going to be like 52 of these live chats. There'll be one for every day of the week. And the end is going to come around sooner rather than later. It's going to be sort of late March, which is when we'll finish this 3-month challenge. So the other seed I want to plant in your mind, Anna Spanner says, latecomer, will certainly tune in again. Cool, fantastic. And just so you know, the old ones that we've had on various topics are all on my YouTube channel. The link is in my profile. So really, when these come to an end, I want to plant in your mind the idea of where do you want to be at the end of this 12 months? Some people have been with me, like turning up for these for the whole 12 months. Where do you want to be at the end of this? Use these talks to create whatever it is that you want to create at the end of this. And it might just be, it doesn't have to be specific. You know, this isn't about goals. This is just more about a state of being. Where do you want to stand at the end of this 12 months when this is finished? Hey, Io, how's it going? I'm just wrapping up. Yeah, so use these to help you. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I am traveling for the next few months. So the next one of these is actually going to be on the 21st of October. So you've got a little bit of a break, but I will make sure that I obviously always, as I always do, post the advert on my feed so that you know when the next one's coming up. It'll be the 21st of October. Don't know what the topic will be. If there's any topics that you want me to have a look at, then DM me, or just let me know and I'll see what I can come up with. But until then, guys, it's been a pleasure as always. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and oh no, Joaquin says, have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Have a brilliant week. I know you're going to smash it, and I will see you in a few weeks' time. Bye. Lots of love.